That one voice will bring me a powerful being from another dimension. A scientific breakthrough for me. An unforgettable magic show for the masses.
Today, I am going to be working on a Mok cosplay. This is a character from the 1983 movie Rock and Rule. I've been obsessed with this movie since I saw it, which probably was in 2011, and I've been especially obsessed with the main antagonist of the film since I first watched this movie. So it is in my habit as a cosplayer to dress up as the horrifying old men that consume my every thoughts. So I will be doing that today. And I figured while I do that, I might as well record the process and talk about this character because he's wild and there's a lot to be said about it. And it's a movie that is well known in some circles, but not in many. So if you knew who Mok was before this video, awesome. Come along with me. This is going to be great. If you didn't know who he was and you stick around because you like makeup and stuff, then you're going to learn a lot about a very interesting villain who had a lot of potential. So let's get started. First, I'm just going to get my hair out of the way so I can focus on my face. So this movie, as I said, it came out in 1983. It was made by Nelvana, a Canadian animation studio, which previously had been best known for animating things for advertisements, for commercials. And they also had a few children's cartoon properties. I believe Care Bears was maybe one of their bigger shows. But this was their first and only full-length animated film. And it was unique in many ways that it was kind of a epic rock opera fantasy. It was an adult movie, so it was made for an adult audience, which I think has, at least in Western cinema, still struggled as a genre to kind of find its feet. It's coming up more now with animated shows, things like Rick and Morty and Below Decks and things like that. But full-length adult animated content, especially 2D hand-drawn animated content like this, it had a brief surge in the 80s with things like heavy metal and stuff like that. Okay, so I'm going to start with eyeliner because that is a big thing for him. He's got a lot of makeup, and it's one of the things that I was always drawn to about his design. He's meant to be this epic super rocker, a rock and roll icon legend from the time of the big hair bands and things like that. So he has a lot of makeup, very dramatic eyeliner and eyeshadow, and his mouth is kind of the most iconic thing when you see him. I think most of the animation went into just animating his lips, and it's kind of uncanny and creepy to look at, and yet it's fascinating. So I'm going to just start doing my makeup, lining my eyes, and I'll talk a bit about this too as I go. So one thing that I think is so interesting about the way that Mok is handled in the film is that the movie opens with him. It begins with his story. So there were two versions made. There was the original Canadian version, and then when it was purchased by MGM and brought over for American audiences, they made some changes to it. And one of the biggest changes is the opening sequence. So in both versions, it's like a word scroll, kind of like how the opening of Star Wars, where this kind of intro is rolling across the screen as a narrator reads aloud for you what is said. And in the original version, it focuses on Mok, and it establishes who he is and his motivations for what he is doing. The American version would later replace that for an introduction that focused more on kind of explaining essentially the design and the setting of the characters in this movie, because they are kind of anthropomorphic people. So they have elongated noses and little pointy ears, and there's even scenes of characters who look way more animalistic. There's a pig man that you see when they're in New York later in the film. But this was like a stylistic choice. I think the animators were familiar with animating animal creatures and anthropomorphic creatures and characters. So they kind of stuck with that as they developed this, their adult animated movie, to advertise not only an adult animated film, but one where the studio, I think, felt the need to try and explain why people look the way they do, because they're like, why are they animal people? We have to explain that. So they instead gave us an intro that was like a backstory of like a World War III scenario that wiped out humanity, and the only survivors were dogs, cats, and rats, like street animals. That the idea is they eventually evolved to become these like the new sentient beings on the planet, and that's why we have these anthropomorphic characters, which it's like, that's fascinating, sure, but it's also, I mean, you don't really need that explanation. You can just kind of see the design of the characters from the posters and the trailers and be like, okay, so it's just like animal people. Like, that's just the world that we live in. We don't really need the explanation for that. But anyway, the original Canadian version, it's opening also this title scroll with the narrator kind of explaining to us kind of the setup for the film. That one focuses on Mok, who is our antagonist. I almost said protagonist. I mean, it's his whole movie, so it's kind of about him. But it's explaining how he is this legendary super rocker who has gone into retirement, essentially, and like kind of become this recluse, building this mansion in this town. Ohm Town is where he is set up. And it's this place that is incredibly like stormy, has a high concentration of thunderstorms. And so the town itself is kind of built around that. And it's all about like their power plants. They're like harvesting the lightning essentially to make power, which is really freaking cool. And it's also really neat to see their like shots in the movie when they're kind of in the town and there's like this park and it's like this beautiful fountain, but the statues are all kind of like these Zeus-like figures, people with lightning bolts in their hands. So just the setting of that is amazing. But that also draws Mok to this location. It's where he builds his secluded mansion and where he kind of sets up and starts doing these mysterious kind of experiments, is what the narrator tells us. He's kind of reemerged to start this worldwide talent search, and it's all very mysterious. Like the most famous celebrity in the world is like, oh, I'm going to go off for a while, I'm going to work on my craft. And then when they come back again, they're like suddenly being like, okay, I need to like find these other talented people to potentially like partner with or record with or do other things. And so he is conducting this worldwide talent search, looking for something. What the public doesn't know that the narrator informs us of is that Mok has become obsessed with this idea that he is like losing his fame, and also I believe too potentially like it's kind of like his midlife crisis. He's getting older, he's not as popular as he once used to be, and that freaks him out because he's a complete narcissist, a complete control freak, and he has to have everything be like, you know, it's him or nothing. So being the most famous celebrity in the world wasn't enough for him. He needs more. He wants essentially world domination because of course. And the way that he is going to do that, he decides so intelligently, is to summon a demon from another dimension and then use its power to take over the world, I guess. He has supercomputers at his reclusive mansion that are busy working on decoding some kind of ancient code that it's going to like give him the answer to opening this doorway. And meanwhile, he knows that as the code, which is referred to as the Armageddon key, once it is fully decoded, it'll give them essentially musical notes that once sung by the exact perfect voice will open this doorway, allowing him to bring the demon through. So as the computers are working on decoding the Armageddon key, Mok is conducting this talent search to try and find that one special voice. And that's how we open the movie. And it's just like incredible with, first of all, this unbelievable, like dark, heavy rock kind of concept, but then also like it's villain driven, which is wonderful. I feel like you don't get that a lot. And then also just like the location that they give us. ohmTown in itself isn't really talked about. We just have like little kind of comments about it and the fact that like most of the scenes take place in ohmTown. But it's just amazing. It's like a great start. And so, how could you not get hooked? Okay, so I've got my just basic kind of eyeliner done. Mok's like has very dramatic eye makeup. So I'm going to do a very dark, heavy upper lid kind of eyeliner. It's going to go far off to the sides, big winged look. I've got some false lashes that I'll be adding later that'll really add to this vavoom kind of big shape and very cartoony, very drag queen. So I will be doing my best attempt at that, doing my best drag king today to kind of emulate that. But I'm just going to keep working and kind of talking about stuff as we go. In our first scenes that we actually get in the movie, Mok has returned home. At least that's how they refer to ohmTown. In fact, he himself calls it Ohm, Sweet Ohm. And he has come back after unsuccessfully conducting his search. He has not found that one voice yet. His henchmen seem to believe that the voice just isn't out there. They've looked everywhere. But Mok insists, he says, no, let's do one more show. There's a local place here. Like, let's just go there and then see what could, be going on, if there's something there. So they get in the car, they go to the show, and that is where we meet our protagonists. And the lead is Omar, who is a very unlikable main character, in my opinion. But that's kind of what's fascinating and charming about him. He's not meant to be likable. He's a very impulsive, loud, kind of bipolar, moody man who doesn't like to share the spotlight with his bandmates, or especially like the other member, Angel, who is also a songwriter and a singer. They have this whole debate of, they have the opportunity to do 2 songs. And so one of them, she wants the opportunity to play a song that she has written. He begrudgingly kind of half agrees to it. It's a very flaky answer. But they go on. They do Omar's song first. Oh, the other band members are Stretch and Dizzy, cute, classic, kind of silly side characters. They do their band. They do their song. It's very screamy and angry and loud. Omar's literally accosting like audience members. And so Mylar, the owner of the club, who is one of the best characters in the whole movie, he, cuts the power. He's like, no, you guys can't keep playing. This song blows. Get out of here. Omar threatens him with violence, and he's like, okay, fine, go on. Like, do one more song, whatever. Please don't punch me in my own establishment. Angel then goes up to sing her song. And it's at this point where Mok first sees her, and there's so much here. He has an AI that is busy working on decoding the Armageddon key and has designed a ring that he wears that will light up when it detects the frequencies of the voice that they're looking for. So when Mok is sitting mysteriously in the shadows at the back of this club that's like pretty much empty except for the one girl that was accosted by Omar, who then leaves, presumably. He's now the only one there, and Angel gets up to sing. The ring goes off, and he does this like kind of spooky slow clap, and forgive me, Mylar, the owner of the club, has been told that like the greatest rock star in history is sitting in the back of his establishment. So he goes over to talk to him and is completely ignored by this being. But he sees that Mok is interested. So he goes backstage afterwards and he's like, okay, I'm going to be your guys's rep. I'm going to be your manager. So we need to get like a label and all this stuff figured out. And it's kind of an issue of conflict at the beginning of the story because it's this idea of, okay, like who is your lead singer? Is it Omar or is it Angel? Omar storms off when Angel is singing and performing because he can't stand like sharing the limelight with her. And it kind of, breaks her heart and the band all kind of go off and kind of separate. So what should be a wonderful, successful evening is kind of destroyed by this temper tantrum that Omar throws. I'm not going to talk through the entire plot of the movie. I think I want to focus on some of these main like Mok related things. But this is how Mok finds her. She's been here in this tiny town where he kind of set up shop to begin with. So there's kind of like fate element to that. But he then later sends one of his henchmen to go like search for them and invite them up to his mansion in the mysterious forest in the mountains. And they decide to go check out the opportunity. Because why wouldn't you? There's this great line, by the way, that Mylar says after he's done speaking with Mok, and he goes backstage to catch himself what he believes is going to be a very valuable act that he can then represent and reap the benefits of if Mok is interested in them. He says, he goes back and he's like, "Oh, I loved your performance. It was great. Also, someone else loved it. A very close and personal friend of mine, the only ohmTown rocker to have an album go from gold to platinum to plutonium in one day." And it's just like these ideas of, I don't know if that's meant to be a joke, but you could also look into it as like, wait, do they actually have, in a place called ohmTown, they would totally have plutonium level records. So it's just little like world building details like that I think are so charming and fun to explore. There's also a lot of interesting kind of lore and intrigue that is kind of established just in the way that other characters talk about Mok. In that moment, Mylar, when the band like doesn't guess who it is, and he's like, "It's Mok, the magic man." And I think that's like one level of intrigue about Mok that is so fascinating. The thing is about this character, he is so much crammed into him, and it should ruin the character, but I don't know, at least for me, it makes it all the more fascinating. He's like supposed to be the greatest musician in the world. He is a like satanic enthusiast obsessed with power and interdimensional travel. He is maintaining this persona that he is a magic man, like he's actually has magical powers. And I think that's something that like not everyone actually believes it. Omar makes fun of it. He's like, no, it's all just like camera effects and like smoke and mirrors. He's not actually magic. But then you hear characters like Stretch and Dizzy kind of talking about him when Omar's like saying this bad stuff about Mok. And I think especially because he has a home here in ohmTown, and you get the kind of idea that he kind of like controls things. He oversees stuff from his secluded house up in the mountains. And Zip is kind of like, he's like, "No, Omar, don't talk like that. Like, he's everywhere. Mok sees everything." And just this kind of idea that's like, I think he's trying to make people believe that he actually has these abilities. He's like scaring them into submission. I think Mok would definitely have the like fear over love kind of approach to get, people to follow him and do what he wants. And it's something that he also attempts to prove again and again when he's interacting with Angel and with the other members of the band. So he invites them up to his mansion, and from the start, it's all just meant to like wow and impress them and maybe make them feel uneasy or that they've stepped into this like new unfamiliar territory. The mansion itself is this unusual like design. You kind of hear like an ominous chanting sound. And again, that could be like meant to be kind of played off as a joke, or who knows, it would not put it past Mok to actually have like speakers like outside that are like playing the scary music that you hear as you approach his door. Once inside, he has the most amazing entrance that you could imagine, which I'll probably see if I can play a little clip of that here.
Anyone want a beer? I'm Mok.
Hi.
When he's trying to convince Angel to sign a contract with him and join him, like, become this kind of musical partnership, he's got her essentially in like a holodeck that she's unaware of. Like, he asks her to go take a stroll in the garden. We see behind the scenes that he has his people like actually like operating this whole elaborate like effects studio. You know, they're like, okay, close up on 2. We're like, boss is ready with this effect in 5, 4, 3. They're running their own Hunger Games. And he's got this whole thing to try and make Angel feel as if he's like, no, look, I have actual magic, but I need to have more, and I need people to believe that I am this powerful. That's like things that he talks about with her. He's like, oh, my last concert wasn't fully sold out. And he's like, no, I need to make people believe in real magic, in my magic. And he knows it's bullshit. I think even though she's wowed a little bit, she knows that it's not real as well. I think she'd have bigger reactions to some of the things that she's forced to see in this room if she actually thought that this was an ability that he had. But then he keeps it up when he brings her later to New York. And again, he's trying to like persuade her to join him and agree to him. He uses this trick again. And again, we see the people behind the scenes, like making the effects happen where like he'll fade through a wall and then his head will emerge like ginormous as if he's like the Wizard of Oz kind of a thing. And it's just weird little details. And it's that like obsession with that level of amazement and control over an audience, which I think is so fascinating. There's so many levels to it, because if you think about him as this entertainer who has always tried to be bigger and better than the last performance that he's done, you know, if you go from gold to platinum to plutonium, how do you get better than that? You can't after a while. Like, there is no exponential forever. And so I love the idea that this narcissistic, power-hungry person would jump to the idea, it's like, oh, you know what? Entertaining masses and making billions of dollars isn't enough. I need to rule the world and do it with a satanic monster at my side. So, it's just the natural conclusion. Okay, I'm going to move on to eyeshadow. It's half an hour just talking about this and doing eyeliner. It's great, right? So I don't want to do like a full cartoony look. When I do cosplays, I don't try to be like screen accurate, because especially with a character design like Mok, that would be absolutely horrifying. I'm going to be a little over the top, but not too much. So I'm not going to like cover my eyebrows and make the eyeliner like that big with like the creepy little pencil brows. Ugh, no, I'm going to be a more human version of him. I'm also not going to go for the animal features. I'm going to keep my little human nosy. I don't know. It's just, I like to pay homage to these characters, not fully transform myself into them. So first, I'm just going to start by laying down this blue and kind of just all over my lid. I might try to make it a bit more dimensional and do kind of like a dark fade in the corner. In fact, I think I will do that. That'll be nice. That'll give it kind of just a neat little extra detail. The other thing that I think is interesting about his makeup design, it's kind of clownish. And I also wonder how intentional that was. Like, with his kind of pink little nose and his blue eyeshadow the way that it is, it almost kind of like feels as if, I don't know, maybe they saw that and they're like, it looks kind of like a clown. And they're like, well, he's an entertainer. I think we're supposed to laugh at his ridiculous ambition. So I don't know, you could read into that. That could be an intentional design choice. I've never really done this before, of like kind of focusing towards the middle. I always do stuff towards the outside, but I don't know. I'm kind of liking, I think it's giving an implication to more of the cartoonish eyelid. Although it does make me look a little sad. Boo-hoo. So Mok tries to get Angel to sign a contract with him. She seems interested at first, but then when she finds out that the band is not going to be included in this, it would just be her. She, with her loyalty, says no. She's like, no, we're just starting to like come together. We're figuring our sound out. I can't leave these guys. There's a great line where earlier when she and Omar are fighting and he does this kind of like shitty apology, and he's like, when he stormed out from the concert or their performance, and he was like, no, but you did a good job. I don't know. I just lost my cool and I just want everything all the time right now. And this seems to placate her, and she's sympathetic to that want. And she's like, I want everything too, Omar, but these things take time. And we then get this shot as they kind of like hold hands and like walk off to like have their kind of like forgiving moment with each other, that Mok has been observing them from the shadows of his limousine, so he hears her say that, and he then uses that later to tempt her when he has her in the holodeck kind of room, trying to be like, hey, like, you know, join me. This is a once in a lifetime opportunity. I'm the most famous, most powerful man in the world, and I can give you everything that you want. And he's trying to convince her to leave the band behind. And she's like, I couldn't leave them for anything. And his response is, I'm not offering you anything. I'm offering you everything. And it's just like, oh, it's just so, no one should be looking into this with as much detail as I am, but this is what I love. Mok, like, he also wants everything. That's, I think, an interesting thing that all three of these characters have in common. It's like, I think partially this like entertainer kind of goal of having this, I don't know, maybe it's the security, it's the lust for fame and attention, or you could even see it as affirmation of, like, you know, when you have this talent and you want people to tell you, yes, this is worth all of the time and effort that you've spent. We like you. We like what you do. Keep it up, essentially. And then the desperation that comes from, like, when you put your heart and soul into these songs that you write and these songs that you sing and the music that you make and the performances that you put on, you know, you need to have someone confirm and tell you this was worth all this time and effort. So I think it's understandable that all three of them are willing to go to extremes to try and get that. Mok obviously has the wrong way of going about it, kidnapping women and summoning demons and killing people, but whatever. It's a theory of mine that he's experienced every thrill that this world has to offer, and he still wants more, so he has to now go to a different dimension to find it. Like, he has all the money he could ever want, all the power and influence he could ever want. He, I'm sure, has done every single drug imaginable, has had like every sexual experience, has done every thrill. So now he needs something more. When you kind of like level out, you're like, okay, well, I got to keep going, right? I got to keep climbing. So, you know, just find an Armageddon key and have a supercomputer that can decode it for you and kidnap a lady and make her sing. Easy. Okay, I think now I'm going to take a darker blue and kind of like do a smoky thing. And I don't know how much that's going to cover, but let's just play with it and see what happens. So Mok won't take no for an answer. So he kidnaps Angel, uses some kind of weird science drug ball thing to essentially like brainwash the guys, puts them in an automobile, pushes them down a mountain with the idea that probably they'll crash and die and he won't have to worry about them anymore. And then he transforms his mansion into a giant Zeppelin and takes off for New York, which is also, there's so many little puns in this thing. Obviously, because again, yeah, everything is like nuclear powered. Everything is like, I don't know, that's another element of world building you could really look into, with this idea that it's kind of this post-apocalyptic setting, that then everything would come down to like the resources that you can, you know, like gather. So if what was New York is now, like, the way that they got their power back was through nuclear energy, and then became Nuke York City. And ohmTown, the way they got their power back was through electrical energy, which they harness from the thunderstorms and the lightning. Again, I don't know if the creators of this thought this hard about it. Probably they did. But boy, I'm loving the ideas. One thing when you're working with blues and other extreme pigments, the fallout leaves dark circles. But that's okay, because one thing that I think I also really like about his design is he just, like, they don't hide the wrinkles, the lines of his face, because I think that's a big thing to know about his character, is that he's kind of, like conscious about how he's aging. And which is probably also another reason why he wears such heavy makeup, to try and, keep that kind of young, youthful look. But he, like, all the lines on his face is very emphasized. He has these kind of dark shadows under his eyes, which I'm going to try and emulate. I need to see which is the best color to do that with. This will probably be way too heavy, so I might have to take some off, but let's just give this a shot. I'm winging this whole thing. Because Mok is someone who probably just doesn't sleep unless he has to, unless he, like, physically passes out. I can see him, like, taking supplements and other weird shit to just keep him up so that he can just keep working. I think that's working pretty well. Gotta make myself look tired. I'm a tired old rock and roll guy. Just dark shadows. Feel free to fill in the natural lines and grooves. I'm so weary. I don't know about you guys, but there's something about those kind of like tired eyes that I think are just so appealing in the design of a character. I don't know. There's like a sexy weariness about it. Someone who like, they're like, nope, I kind of neglect my own personal health for the sake of pursuing my goals, which is not healthy at all. Very bad, but yet, I don't know. There's something about the dark under eye, that kind of tiredness that's like, ooh, what have you been through? Healthy, I know, right? Okay. Good and exhausted. I'm so tired of summoning demons and searching for voices. Okay. Yeah, it's pretty good. Sweet. Okay, let's do eyebrows next. Okay. So I think this is going to look really extreme at first because I have like strawberry blonde hair. So whenever I do like dark eyebrows, it looks crazy until I get my wig and my whole look together. Focus mode. Okay, so again, in his design, he's got like these really dramatic big like eyelids that are all made up. And then he's got these kind of like skinny little pencil eyebrows. Again, I'm doing my own take on this. I don't like the skinny, thin little eyebrows. So I'm going to do like a thick, dark brow just because I want to. And I think it's a better look. So I'm improving upon this character. Come at me. Alrighty. So Angel is escaping from his like apartment in New York or whatever with the help of a side character that we don't need to talk about. And while they're like crawling through the air ducts essentially to sneak out, she like looks down and sees Mok in this room, and he's talking to his AI, his like supercomputer, which again, an amazing kind of 80s dystopic sci-fi design is that this computer literally is like a giant brain that then has this big monitor kind of protruding from it. And there's even this like kind of air pump thing that looks almost like a breathing apparatus. So it's like, I need to know, did Mok build this, or did he like commission scientists to make it for him because he has all the money? He doesn't quite seem smart enough to me to be the one to actually have created this machine. But he has it, and it's amazing. So the AI has decoded the Armageddon key. It gives him a progression of notes that when sung by this perfect voice, the vibrations of that voice will then essentially unlock this doorway between dimensions. Which again, using music as a magic source, like it's very, if you're a bard in D&D or things like that, I mean, these are magic systems that I love when people actually explore and look into. So that's freaking awesome. But Mok is all ecstatic. He's like, sweet, I've got the girl, I've got the song, I am ready to go. Let's get this demon out here. And his AI kind of like, stomps on him real quick. And she's like, actually, in my calculations, I found that there is a way to send the demon back. And he's like, excuse me, what? Fucking what? What'd you say? She's like, well, let me just like check and see who this person is. And he's like, yeah, tell me right now. I'm going to find that guy and kill him or whatever. And as she's searching, she comes back with this very vague, mysterious response that says, there is no one. And so he's like, oh, sweet, nobody, awesome. There's, because there's like something that she comes up with too, where she's like, oh, the power of one voice, one heart, one song, but there is no one. And again, you can see where this is going. It's leading into the whole idea of like, well, you can't do this alone. It's not about me over you. It's about like partnership, working together, being a duet, not a solo act. So, Angel now has this information that she can send the demon back, or somebody can send the demon back. So that's good to have, to kind of set us up for later kind of conclusions. But with that info aside, Mok has kidnapped and tortured her friends. She agrees to sing with him. They attempt the concert for the first time in New York. And this scene, you guys, okay, so they didn't actually film this part. It's all kind of like alluded to in the American remake version. They cut scenes from the end of the movie into this as kind of like a blurry montage to sort of imply that the concert happened once before and yet was not successful. In the Canadian version, it's simply kind of like just does this explosion sound. You don't really get a graphic or an image for it. And then, well, actually, there's like a scene where the poster for his concert kind of like that's up on this wall, it sort of like dissolves, like acid is kind of eating through it. And then there's this explosion sound, and then it just cuts to a news report. Both versions have this news report for the next day. And it's just amazing. It's this like anchor, and he's like, oh yeah, well, after the catastrophic like explosion at the Mok concert last night, all of New York is still without power. But it's this idea, they interview people, but one of the people that they interview are this couple that's trying to sell like merch for the concert, and the lady just says, she's like, I don't know, no one seems to be buying these I Survived a Mok Concert t-shirts. And it's just like, this is something that happens off screen, is kind of treated as a joke, but it's like the idea that like the greatest musician in the world has put on his return concert that everyone is so excited about, revealing this new singer that he's finally found. And you can imagine it's like a sold out arena kind of a thing. There's a power surge because he's doing some kind of satanic, like horrible dimension altering like experiment. The venue explodes, everyone dies, and the city loses power for who knows how long. But people are like, they're like, oh yeah, no one's like demanding like Mok be held responsible because he's the Magic Man. He's kind of like our overlord and dictator of rock and roll. So it's just kind of like then cutting to him just afterwards being like, he's like, oh my God, what the fuck happened? Why didn't it work? And like, he's not mad that like people died or that the building exploded. Of course, he's mad that he didn't get what he wanted. He didn't get his demon. His project didn't succeed. And the computer's answer to him is that the power surge was too intense. New York couldn't handle that much like power, so it just exploded and couldn't handle the dimension doorway demands of such a performance. So she does a quick search, and lo and behold, there is a place that has a power source capable enough to sustain this experiment, which you'd think she'd find that sooner, but I guess maybe they had to like actually be in the process itself to kind of gauge just how much would be needed. And they have to go back to ohmTown. The ohmTown power plant can supply the energy that they need to do the concert. So, wow, they're going back there. But it's just like, I love that it happened once, it didn't work, and he's like, okay, now we have to go and do this all over again. Okay, so I've got my eyebrows. I'll probably go in with like an eyeliner too and kind of intensify that. I want them to be dramatic. Let's do that now. I keep looking at myself and I'm like, remember when I was like not going to be a cartoon character? Pretty cartoony, I'd say. Okay, well, let's just keep going. Okay. Cool. All right, let's do foundation. All right, I turned off the kind of beauty filters so you could actually see what the change will be from when I do my normal skin face into putting the foundation on. Okay, so plot-wise, I mean, Angel tries to seduce Mok into stopping the concert. It doesn't work because he only cares about himself. She refuses to sing, and he has a little freak out, and we actually see him having a tantrum in a room filled with all the different wigs that he wears. So he is canonically a bald character who just has different wigs from his different, concerts, performances. He's very fashion forward, so there's lots of different hair looks. And he's having like a freak out in his wig room. But he decides, he's like, whatever, I don't need her to participate. I guess I can just hook her up to the motherboard and make her sing. Creepy. I know, it's great. So I don't know why you had to convince her this whole time. You could have just grabbed her and made her do it, but whatever, I guess he wanted to try. So they go back to ohmTown. They set up the concert. He successfully opens the gate. The demon comes through. There's a brief moment of, panic for everyone and delight for Mok. He's kind of been like, yep, I did it. Sweet. I don't know what this guy thought was going to happen. I feel like every single time there's a plot like this where some moron is like, oh, I'm going to like summon a demon and then he's going to be my slave and do whatever I want. And it's like, yeah, I think that thing is probably just going to kill you and then run rampant and do whatever it wants. So, but it comes out of the doorway briefly. It like kills several people in the audience. Then Angel attempts to sing it back. She can't do it by herself, though, and it's when Omar arrives to sing with her that the combination of their voices together opens the doorway and they can push it back through, essentially. There's all kinds of stuff that happens. Mok is like, through his negligence and because he's responsible for all of the shit that's happening, accidents happen and one of his henchmen dies, and then the brother gets revenge on Mok because he's like, this is your fucking fault. So he picks Mok up and chucks him into the pit. And he, right before he's sucked into this demonic realm, he's like, no, it's not possible. Like, you can't send it back. The power of one heart, one voice, one song, but there is no one. And then he's pulled down into the gateway before it closes. And they finish with a banger of a concert. Debbie Harry and whoever the guy is who voiced the singing voice for Omar, they sing this great song. And then Mylar gets to be the one to kind of close the concert. And he's like, oh my God, can you imagine? That was the craziest concert I've ever seen. An actual demon came through. The magic man, he's legit. And he has this great line where he's like, Mok's fine, everybody. He's just backstage. Cause it's they think it's all part of the show that this happened. And yeah, it fades out to them singing together and everyone being like, this is the greatest concert ever. It's very much a metalocalypse of everybody dies anytime the band performs kind of a thing, but people are cool with it. They're like, hell yeah, heavy metal, dude, let's fucking do it. So yeah, and that's the end of the movie. As I prepare my face stuff, I guess, so it's all these layers to Mok that has fascinated me. First of all, I love any kind of villain that is this confident and aware of who he is and just kind of flaunts and owns his power and his terribleness, if that makes any sense. This is someone who's evil and likes that term. He's like, nope, that's me. And in fact, there's an incredible line too when they're on their way back to ohmTown and one of his henchmen, who's this kind of childish kind of character, is watching a cartoon show that's talking about do you know the difference between good and evil? And he asks his boss Mok that. He's like, are we evil? Is that what's happening here? And he's getting high on drugs and he's like, of course not. No, it's totally fine. He's like, we have evolved beyond good and evil, black and white. We all must decide for ourselves what is right and what is wrong, which is kind of a philosophical bullshit answer. But then he's like, after all, evil spelled backwards is live, and we all want to do that. So he's just a bad guy who loves being a bad guy, and this is a character that I'm personally not a fan of people trying to kind of give bad guys sympathetic backstories. Pardon me as I put cream all over my face. Because yes, it humanizes them and it can make them more interesting, But also, first of all, he's like a cat rat man, so there's no humanizing that. But then there's something wonderful about a villain who simply relishes in the art of being evil. And I think that's something that Mok embodies 1,000 billion %. So Mok is purely evil. He relishes in that. I think it's wonderful to see in a villain. It's his level of the fact that he is this kind of rock star persona, I think sets him up perfectly for the avant-garde, flamboyant, kind of drag queen-esque nature of him, which there are tons of like analyses and discussions to be had about villains, like queer coding villains. And there are pros and cons that you can see to this. I would recommend looking into like some of the video essays by Lindsay Ellis talks about queer coding Disney villains, especially, as does Matt Baum, who talks about how kind of like the queer community like kind of embodied that and like claimed it as their own. And also that the animators like working on some of these iconic characters were either like from the queer community themselves, and so they were taking inspiration from different like drag queen performers or like, you know, people that they knew. So there's things to be said about both, and it can definitely be used poorly. I am curious to know, I mean, this again, he's not supposed to be a drag queen. He is a rock star, kind of the like David Bowie and you could say Kiss, you know, era of just like that level of like makeup and performance, and you are embodying this character. There's like a stage presence and persona that you take on when you perform. And I think that's kind of Mok's Magic Man kind of thing comes through with that, which is a really cool thing to be like, oh, well, I moonlight as a rock star, but I'm actually a satanic mad scientist in my free time trying to summon demons, you know, the usual. And so that is also just an intriguing characteristic. I love that his motivation is his, I think, fear of obscurity and immortality, or his mortality, facing that, being unable to say, nope, I can't handle the idea that I'm not the number one on the charts, or that anyone might surpass me. Some younger, more talented artist might come and then I will become obsolete. That's unacceptable. I've always been the best and I have to keep being the best. And if that means killing everyone in the process, then fine. That's the way it's meant to be, I guess. I mentioned earlier this sort of mad scientist kind of thing. And that's another detail. Like, even just like the costume design that they got to do with him, I think opens the door for a lot of like interesting character study and analysis. Because like, yes, they're costumes, but like he is someone who tends to like embody every different persona and every different character. It does make me think a lot of David Bowie and how he was like the Starman, the Rocket Man. Not Rocket Man. People who know a lot about David Bowie are going to hate that comment. But he had like this kind of like alien spaceman persona. He had a lot of different characters that he like went throughout his kind of career. I can get these red spots above my brows, my cartoony brows. And I think Mok is a tribute to that as well. So like when we see him in his lab, he's not just like the Mok that we saw earlier. He has a completely different costume and kind of mannerism about him. He's got this like red latex suit, these big mad scientist goggles, and he's just kind of like raving around and just doing whatever he wants. And it's just absolutely fabulous. And I had recently, again, this is me like looking into things that may not actually be the case, but like I recently got into the like Peter Cushing Hammer horror films of like his portrayal of like he was in Van Helsing for the Dracula movies, but he also was Dr. Frankenstein for all of their Frankenstein films. And I think there's kind of like a tribute to that. He's kind of the format for what we know as like the kind of mad scientist look, those like goggles and everything especially. And I love the idea that Mok, gets into that too. And whether or not, again, I don't think he's smart enough to have actually made the science himself, but he can pay the people and he can then pretend that it's his. He's kind of the Elon Musk of mad scientists and just take credit for that and run with it. So again, there's just like so much going on here. Okay. I've got my base down. And I'm just going to set that real quick. I'm going to kind of attempt a bit of like a hollow, gaunt cheek because he's got these insane cheekbones. The hard part is that he's getting into this powder. I might just ruin this whole thing, but let's just see what I can do maybe. Gotta go for the ultimate Tim Burton effect. Gaunt ass faces. What more to say about Mok? I might have covered it. I love his charisma. I love his fashion. I love that he's wholeheartedly evil and he admits it and loves it and owns it. His presence, I think, is part of what captivates me. His motivation is fascinating. I think he's just an interesting character, and you don't see a lot like him. So, yeah, that was enough for little old me. Okay. All right, I think to save on editing and in time, I'm going to stop recording and I'll jump back when I have kind of a more final look and then I can give you some final words. But thanks for coming along this far.
I'm a sin the wit, there is no question that I am it. Hey girls,
Takes a lot. He looks so cool, but he's hot. His name is Mok. Takes a lot. You think he's acting, but he's not.
my name is Mok, thanks a lot. My name is Mok, thanks a lot. My name is Mok, thanks a lot. My name is Mok, thanks a lot.
Anybody want a beer? Hey. So it's a pretty dramatic change once you get the lips done, because that's a big part of Mok, is his lips. And I have to, if I'm going to be making reels about him, I feel like I should be overemphasizing everything with these big dramatic mouth gestures. I'm sorry if I just horrified people. My apologies. But I also popped down kind of like the cosplay or closet cosplay sort of outfit that I just pulled together, just like a pink kind of turtleneck. I've got like a little sash around my neck because he's got that big kind of, I don't even know what you would call it, his big cravat, and then just business jacket kind of a thing. So with the makeup and everything done and the big drag queen eyelashes, it's time to finally do the last bit, which is the hair, which I think for most cosplays, the hair really is crucial to kind of identifying a character, pulling it all together. So I'll actually do, it's almost kind of a Mok cosplay part 1, because he is bald. That is canon. He doesn't have any hair of his own. And so here is Mok part 1. I probably am ruining some of that makeup on the forehead by doing that, but that's okay. We don't want any of our own hair showing through. Okay, so here's Mok part 1. You will bring me my demon, whether you want to or not. Anywho, so let's bring on the main event. I had a video previously where I went through the styling of my mock wig. It has, I feel like, the right shape, its own personality. Again, we're not trying to be exactly like the character. We are doing our tribute to the character. So I did a test recently, by the way, with this wig, because after I finished styling it, I realized that it actually reminded me of another villain, but from a much more family-friendly film. If you are familiar with Barbie Princess and the Pauper and Preminger, I believe is his name, an amazingly out there villain voiced by Martin Short, who brings all of his Martin Shortness to it. That makes it so wonderful. So I had to do my own kind of quick little tribute to that.
Well, how could I refuse? How can I refuse? How can I refuse? And how can I?
Amazing, right? Okay, so let's pop this bad boy on and see our legendary super rocker. So what's great about a lace front wig like this is that it has the clips, and that will really help to hold it in place without having to use glue, which I experimented with gluing my wigs a little bit when I was doing cons, and I didn't want to worry about the wig falling off during the day. And if you really want that layer of security, it's a good move, but you don't need to glue things down if you don't want to. So, oh my God. I look like a drag queen, which is just what I was kind of going for. So that's fabulous. I'm going to let down the long hair in the back, which I did trim. Let me just give this down hair a little brushing. I don't want to ruin the front pieces. We're only brushing the back stuff. And it can be a little wild. That's okay. Well, this is my look. Was it worth this whole process to make myself look like this? You can decide that for yourselves. I'm pleased as punch. It's so freaky to see yourself as a character that you like, just even when they look like freaky, horrible, aged rockers who refuse to admit that they're past their prime. So I'm going to be filming some reels that I can then kind of like use to sort of embody this character, just because when somebody haunts your waking and sleeping thought for so long, you just kind of have to step into their shoes for a little bit to pay homage to them. And this is me doing that. And it's horrifying and I love it. So this was my journey. If you haven't seen Rock and Rule and you are intrigued by it, go check it out. It's definitely not for everybody. The animation style is very it's beautiful. It's fluid at times. At other times, it's incredibly rough. You can really tell that the studio didn't have, I think, enough time or funding to do the full vision that they had in mind. In rewatching it recently, something that stood out to me is the fact that it's a very dark movie, and not just tone, visually. There's a lot of scenes where I think it's just the way that they filmed it. Like, they didn't light the backdrops or these matte paintings that they created, which you can kind of get the sense that they were these like beautifully detailed paintings that are now really hard to see in all of the kind of like burned from VHS copies that they have available of this movie. But give it a chance, look closely. I look for those little details. Admire ohmTown and its dedication to lightning, and how an entire city built up around the idea that they had to harvest energy from the sky after the disaster that was whatever made this world what it is now. These are the settings in which characters like Mok emerge. These power-hungry, mad scientist, demon summoning overlords, which I'm obsessed. We need more villains like that. So go out of the box, tap into it, give us the freaks, the people who know that they're bad, evil, and wild and weird and own it with every inch of their being. So if you made it this far, thanks a lot for joining me. My name is Mok. Thanks a lot. I'll see you guys in another dimension. Bye.
Don't even bother to see it. The quintessent best stands before you now. I'm Mok and I'm the greatest. So try